investigated among us literally thousands of these reports of near-death experiences. Dr. George Gallup of the Gallup poll became very interested in this a few years ago, and he conducted a quite an amazing study which shows that over 8 million American adults have been through this experience. We have also in the United States Dr. Bruce Grayson, who is chairman of the psychiatry department at the University of Connecticut, who has also investigated well over 1,000 cases of persons who have almost died, and who has actually, since he is an emergency psychiatrist, investigated many cases of persons who had these experiences in connection with suicide attempts. We have, in short, we have many, many physicians in the United States who have now done this research, and we all get the same results. I think one of the most significant pieces of research that's going on now is that of Dr. Melvin Morse, who's a professor of pediatrics at the University of Washington School of Medicine. And Dr. Morse has published 3 separate articles in the American Journal of the Diseases of Children since 1983, which talks about his research with over 50 children who have had near-death experiences. And what he has found is that they are identical to those that we hear from adults. So in the United States, it's no longer a question of whether this experience occurs. Certainly, all of the many investigators who have looked into this have found identically the same results.
Yes, but you may be one of the first who have made these results, because you was the first who written this book, or who write this book.
Well, yes, in a way. My book certainly got the attention first, but of course there were many patients who were, or many physicians who were trying to find out about these things over the years. And so it's quite interesting that all of us have found the same thing among our patients.
Mm-hmm. Now your patients, they know about it, but people who don't know about it, what can we learn about this book?
Well, very often my colleagues have mentioned, and I certainly agree, that we can probably learn a lot more about living than we can about dying from these experiences. It's interesting to us that all of the patients who undergo this experience, who see their life pass in review, will tell us that that whatever they see displayed around them there in their review, that the most important thing that they could have done in their lives was to learn how to love other people. And this is a message I think that we can all listen to, the enormous importance in the closing moments of these lives of that the loving interactions that they had with other people assumed in their lives. All of our patients come back from these experiences incidentally telling us that they have absolutely no more fear of death. They say that they are so convinced on the basis of what they went through that what we call death is simply a transition into another level of reality, that they are not going to be afraid of dying. It seems to make their lives much fuller and more enjoyable to have confronted these realities and the course of their close calls with death. So I should say that the most important lessons that we can learn from near-death experiences have a lot more to do with living.
And love, as you tell. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. And love, as you tell. But that's funny because you speak about love. When we're coming back, they make more experience about love and do other things. But that was the mission that Jesus was coming with on the earth in the old time.
Oh, certainly, and this is nothing new in that respect. And it's interesting that many of our patients who have had these experiences say that prior to this experience, they had no religious belief or assumptions whatsoever. Many of them say that prior to the experience, they were atheists or agnostics. And we have had persons who have had these experiences also who have come from all the different great religious traditions. And yet, when these patients come back, they all tell us that it didn't seem to them that it was their religion that was important. That they all agree that all of the great religious traditions of mankind have seen part of the truth.
Oh, it's really nice. But I would like to hear the tunnel you speak about it. A lot about of the black tunnel who a lot of people is passing before they are going out in the light. What are you thinking they are? Because I was thinking it's our body, the soul is living. It's a black tunnel. When you get born, and you passed a tunnel to get here on the life.
Yes, and generally what it seems that the tunnel experience has to do with, in many cases, is the passage from one realm of being to another. This is a very ancient theme, of course, and Plato, 2,500 years ago, wrote about how, in his Republic, about the myth of the cave, in which he gets us to imagine that persons raised under the ground, deep in a cave, may be liberated and brought up through a tunnel into the brilliant light of the world that we live in. And he talks about the profound transformative effects that this experience would have on them. Plato, of course, was a great user of metaphor, and it seems that he was trying to tell us about experiences of passage from one level of reality into another. Hieronymus Bosch painted this theme very beautifully in a painting of his entitled Ascent of the Blessed, in which he depicts people dying, and as they are dying, they're surrounded by spiritual beings who lead them up above their bodies through a tunnel into a brilliant light. And this theme, of course, is identical to what we hear from our patients in emergency rooms today. So certainly this theme of a tunnel seems to imply the passage of the person from one level of reality to another at the point of death.
That's funny that you are speaking about Plato, because it's a philosophic way to see the things, and I know that you have read philosophy before you get a medicine, and it's that thing who have helped you when the first time you met a patient who tell you that they have such an experience.
Well, quite frankly, when I first heard this in 1965. I was so astounded by the story that I hardly knew what to think of it. At the time, I was an undergraduate student of philosophy at the University of Virginia, and one of my own professors told me of an experience of a man in that town who was a professor of psychiatry, Dr. George Ritchie, who had a quite amazing experience when he had been pronounced dead some years before. And I went to hear Dr. Ritchie tell of his story, but quite frankly, since I had only heard one such story at that time, although I was quite impressed by Dr. Ritchie, and it was obvious that he was a very reliable man and quite honest and well known as a doctor in this town, I didn't know what to make of it. I assumed that it was some sort of hallucination induced by the diminished oxygen flow to the brain, or perhaps that it was a wish fulfillment, a fantasy that he had elaborated at the point of death. However, 4 years later, when I was a professor of philosophy myself, by coincidence, one of my own students came up after class and asked me if we could talk in the philosophy class about the question of life after death. And I was very puzzled by this, and I said, well, why would you want to talk about that? And he told me that 1 year before, he had been pronounced dead by his physicians when his heart had stopped beating after a severe accident. And he said that during this time he had had a profound experience that had changed his life. I asked him to describe the experience to me, and I was quite astounded to find that it was exactly the same experience that I had heard from Dr. Ritchie 4 years before. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I began to realize that there must be many people who had had such an experience on the brink of death.
Did yourself have that this experience? Did you have you tried this? No.
No. I have been able to talk with over 1,000 persons who have had a near-death experience, but I've never had such an experience myself. In one way, I am looking forward, when I face death and its natural course of events, to having an experience like this. And at the same time, I'm very glad I haven't, because I think it gives me a sense of objectivity, where in dealing with patients who have had such an experience, I can be perhaps more objective than I would have been if I had had something like this happen to me myself.
That's another thing I would like to know. That what do you perceive the life is on the other side when you have here a lot of this near-death experience? What are you thinking the life is in the other side, just as they are here in the earth?
Actually, the views I have developed over the years about this are very complex. I would have to say that I certainly don't feel that, based on the studies that we have done all over the world now with near-death experiences, that we can prove or establish scientifically that there's a life after death. I think that everyone has to make up his own mind by considering the findings of the research that's been done on near-death experiences. But if you're asking me from the point of view of my heart, what I really deeply believe inside, I would have to tell you that's entirely subjective, that it's based on my work with these patients, and that I certainly wouldn't want to try to convince anyone else of this. But that certainly in my heart I have absolutely no doubt that these patients do get a glimpse of the life hereafter, and that this has so assured me personally that there is a life after death that I think, oddly enough, I'm not too interested in knowing the exact details of the life after death. This has made me much more interested in living life as we have it here. And I often think that if I spent all of my time while I'm alive speculating on exactly what it would be like when we die, then I might get over there and I would be asked, well, what have you done with your life? And I would have to say, not much, because I spent all my time over there trying to figure out what it's like over here. Mm-hmm. So I don't really speculate too much on that. For me, it's enough to know that in my mind, certainly, that there is a survival of death, and that when I die, I will learn more about it. But for now, I want to engage in my life here and to learn as much as I can about living while I'm on the earth. I should say also that this opinion of mine, that although we don't have scientific proof that there's a life after death, that nonetheless that I have come to accept it based on my conversations with these patients who have almost died. This is certainly a view that's held by my many colleagues in the United States, the many other medical doctors who have worked on this identical project, and certainly also of Dr. George Gallup, who has done a rather astounding survey showing that over 8 million American adults have been through such an experience. So I think it's very complicated, but that I believe that the experiences of people who almost die can give us a sense of hope that there is more to life than we imagine.
That's funny because I was thinking in a reincarnation, you know, it's reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
Yeah, reincarnation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about that because some of the people here, some of us is living 20 years, some of it 50 years, and some of us 100 years. But there's nothing about the age of the Earth, and now you tell me that your experiment is here on the Earth and not on the other side. But what is the connection between the brain, the heart, and the soul?
I wish I knew. That's certainly one of the profound philosophical difficulties that have troubled philosophers from the very beginning. And of course, I would be absurd to suggest that I had found the solution to that. But in terms of what I think, again, it seems that my faith now, my understanding is that the body is a temporary vehicle, and that when we die, we will go into another realm of being, and that even after the death of the brain, that our souls, another part of us, is still quite alive.
It's because I would like to, if you know about people who can guide people back to their other life, and they can see it in their brain. They can see how they have lived in another country for maybe 100 years ago, and so, and that's what I'm thinking about, the soul and the brain, because for me that the brain is something as a computer, no?
Yes, I think so. We have always tried to understand the human brain based on analogies with our own technology. And certainly this is one way of looking at it. And I would also think that we have not yet developed technology sophisticated enough really to understand such a complicated thing as the connection between the mind and the brain. Perhaps at some future development of human understanding, we will know a lot more about this than we do now.
And I was thinking, when you make an operation and you know that it's hopeless for this person.
Yes.
What are you thinking when you try to keep the person in life, and you know that the life on the other side will be much better for these people?
Well, actually, what we know from many resuscitations now is that quite often our patients will be quite angry at us for resuscitating them after they have been in this wonderful world of a near-death experience. They actually get quite angry at the physicians for resuscitating them and bringing them back. One of my colleagues, who is a internationally renowned cardiologist, has told me that he first became aware of this experience when he resuscitated one of his own professors of medicine, who, when he was resuscitated, yelled, "Fred, don't you ever do that to me again." And later on, after he recovered, he took Fred aside and he explained to him that he had been in a very beautiful place and he was angry at Fred for having resuscitated him. We hear this from many physicians, and yet I must say that it's important to look at this from a broader perspective. Although it's certainly true that the patients get angry at us for bringing them back from this state, after a few weeks they say that they are very glad that they are given this opportunity to live again and to go on learning in life.
Yes, but I'm asking, what are you thinking? Because I know that from your book that the patient get angry at you, but you may feel sometime it's hopeless with this man I'm operating, and he's not living more than maybe 2 weeks. Are you thinking sometime, oh no, I don't want to make it, let him go to the other side, it's much better?
Well, I must say I have to listen to the patients who tell us that that after a while, even if they've been quite angry at us for resuscitating them, they are very pleased to be given the opportunity to live again. So I think that the role of the physician is to help the person live, and it's certainly not the prerogative of a physician to play the role of God and to do anything other than his best to ensure that the patient have as long and as comfortable a life as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big problem. But
yes, it is. Very big indeed.
People who make meditation, they can see the people from the other side. They can leave their body.
Yes.
Did you think it's a near-death experience too?
From my judgment, there are many circumstances in which people may have part of a near-death experience without even necessarily being near death. We know from a study that's been published several years ago in the American Journal of Psychiatry that a large number of persons have spontaneous out-of-the-body experiences and other conditions than being ill, and indeed sometimes when they are not even under any stress of any nature at all, just spontaneously. And these experiences can be very powerful and moving to people. We also know from a long history of mysticism that some of the great mystics of world history have been able to have ecstatic and very beautiful experiences without being near death. So certainly there is a continuum between these kinds of experiences and what we hear from patients who almost die.
And that's so I would like to know, it's a body we have here, and we have a soul, but do you believe that we have more other bodies who is not, you can see it the real way? As you know, when you look at molecule, an atom, you cannot see the atom with the eyes, but
yes.
You know, people is calling that aura, as bodies around the normal bodies. Are you thinking that more of we have more bodies than this physical bodies?
Certainly, that's what my patients tell me. They tell me that when they leave their bodies and leave their physical bodies behind, there is still in a kind of body which they find it very difficult to describe. They will very often say the spiritual body or another form of body which has a form and a shape, even limbs, extensions which seem like arms and hands. So certainly there does seem to be another kind of body than the one that we are presently inhabiting, and that I certainly believe that when we die, we come to use this body in the spiritual realm just as we use the physical body in this realm.
It's really nice, but I would like to know if your faith in God has been strange after you have made all these interviews.
Certainly I would say a faith in the spiritual reality. I have no more doubt whatsoever that when we die, we do go into a life hereafter. Now, the exact nature of that, I don't know. What all of my patients have told me is that one specific religious belief does not matter. That when one goes into this reality, what one takes with one are simply the quality of loving interactions that one has given to one's fellow human beings. And that at that point, it does not matter what precise religious beliefs or doctrines that you had, that the only thing that counts is your acceptance of the spiritual reality.
Oh, it's really nice. And last question is, what do you think all these experiments will say people in the future?
I believe that as we learn more and more about near-death experiences, there will be a broader acceptance by many more people that that these experiences do exist and that they change the lives of persons to whom they happen very dramatically. As I look at the world situation, it seems to me that unless we really do start loving one another, then certainly we're going to destroy one another because of the availability of nuclear weapons and so on. I think we absolutely must reach a point in our civilization and in our development where we accept the reality of the spiritual life, because in my opinion, that's the only way in which we can be saved from nuclear destruction.
It was really nice to speak with you, Mr. Raymond Moody, and I hope one day I'll meet you.
So do I.
I'm sorry that it will be in the telephone and all the complications we have.
Oh, that's quite all right. Don't worry about it one bit.
Oh, now I have the interview, so I'm really happy for that.
Wonderful.
And I say really thanks, but did you have an address people could write to if they have something we will tell you here from Denmark?
Yes, certainly. Let me give you my address.
Yeah.
The most convenient place to write me is the Department of Psychology,
Yeah.
West Georgia College,
Mm-hmm.
Carrollton. That's Carrollton, Georgia.
And they have a number?
Yes, 30117, USA.
It's really nice. A phone number is people don't want to write, but
Oh yes,
phone?
certainly. It's area code 404.
Yeah.
836
Yeah.
6510.
It's really nice.
For me too.
Well, I said thanks for it.
I hope
But I hope that you can get a letter from all Europe and all the Scandinavians. So
me too.
you have things to write. But I can tell you that I have seen the tunnel once.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but it was when I was born, my little son. I get very ill.
Oh my.
So I tried this experiment, but so I have seen it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so pleased to talk with you, and I hope that someday we can meet.
Yeah, I would like it.